Hello, everyone. Welcome today to our webinar with the topic Future of Organizational Structures, Centralized versus Decentralized. And today we have three speakers from one of their biggest and famous companies in the industry that will be sharing their experience and case studies. Let me start with a brief introduction of FS, FinTech Advisory Services, what we're doing. And then I will be happy to continue with our great speakers. So FS offers a full scale of advisory and venture building services for startups and SMBs, including strategic marketing, planning, business analytics, and finance. We also help with blockchain adoption, and all the services are aimed to facilitate the business growth of our clients. FAST also bridges the gap in the venture capital field by helping promising tech startups to access investments and required resources. And that's also one of the reasons we're having these webinars, that we can help startups to explore the field and important questions and aspects in the industry. So today, I'm happy to continue with John DeVadoss, head of development at Neo. And John today will be covering the journey to decentralized model, also the characteristics of our decentralized model, and the future of organizational structures. John, it's a big pleasure to have you today with us, and you can maybe start with a brief introduction, and we will be happy to hear you talk.
Definitely. Thank you, Elena. Good morning and good afternoon. Again, it's a privilege to be here, to be part of the FAS series, and thank you for having me back. Yes, so I am based in Seattle, Washington. I lead up development for Neo Blockchain, based here in the Pacific Northwest. Previously spent many years in the enterprise space, working for Microsoft for close to 20 years. So I have a very strong background with respect to platforms and tools for developers. So on the topic of decentralization, as Elena said, just to give you sort of the context and how I see it. So first of all, there's a very famous quote which goes something like this, about change. And it says, change happens gradually and then suddenly. And by the way, for those folks, who are watching or listening, if you're a fan of Hemingway, you will remember that Hemingway uses this quote in his books. So for me, when I think about decentralization, it's a very similar journey. It's been happening gradually, and it's quite possible that suddenly, we're going to cross this chasm, if you will, and we are going to be in the land of decentralization. So why do I say this? If you look at the three dimensions, society, economics, and then technology. And by the way, these are good dimensions to look at, to examine any scenario. So from a social perspective, society, for me, trends like Brexit, for instance, very clearly are a leading indicator that society is looking beyond today's models, is looking to tomorrow with respect to new, meaning, again, decentralized, more autonomous entities. Secondly, if you look at economics, I think it's pretty clear to all of us that, as we look at central banks, and I use the word central very precisely, it's very clear that central banks across the world, name any geography, any time zone, any country, have been and are struggling to control, to manage their nation's future trends. And last but not the least, if you look at technology, I think it's very apparent right now that people, the common man, the common woman on the street is not particularly happy with the way large centralized social media controls what one can and cannot say. So for me, across the social, the economic, and the technical dimensions, it's very clear. it's very apparent that we are on this wave of change. And like I said, it will be very gradual for some time, but then we will cross this bridge before we even know it. I do want to say, one caveat. There is this perception, or almost this perhaps understanding that it is binary. It is all central or it's all decentralized, and there is nothing in between. And I want to offer a counterpoint, which is from biology. So if you look at biology, it's very clear. There is both centralization and decentralization. And I think if there is anything we learn from biology, from evolution, from the history of the planet and mankind, it is that there are some principles there that will apply for us with respect to, again, the social, economic, and technical dimensions. So I would say, just the caveat, there is a significant change. We will be there before we even know it, but just be aware that it's not a binary world. And so towards this particular mission, we at NEO, we are building the platform for what we call the smart economy. So what is the smart economy? I believe that digitization is inevitable, is the imperative. Everything will be digitized. And if that is the underlying assumption, then any and all assets will also be digitized. So how do we manage those assets? How do we define, describe, architect, develop, deploy? How do we secure? How do we scale? Right? How do we manage? This for us is the underlying theme with respect to the NEO blockchain platform. And in particular, for me, as I look at decentralization and the world of tomorrow, the way we get there is obviously, the common man, the common woman on the street, but also developers, because we need developers to be able to take this change forward with respect to digitization. So for me, the way I see it is there's about 20 million developers globally, 20 million. And today, if I ask you how many developers are working in the blockchain space, I get responses anywhere from 50,000, 100,000, maybe 500,000. But even if it is 500,000, it is very much almost a rounding error in the bigger scheme of things. And so my firm conviction is to enable this wave of decentralization, we need millions and millions of developers, which means we need tools. And I'm a platform and tools guy here in Seattle, and I'm building these tools for those millions and millions of developers to help us to navigate this transition from where we are, from where we have been to where we will be in the future. That's really how I see it, Elena. And I'll give this back to you.
Thank you, John, for your talk and sharing with us this insightful information. So now I will be happy to switch into a quicker Q&A. I also would like to motivate everyone to drop their questions in whatever streams they're using at the moment. And our today's panelists are also free to participate if you have anything to add or ask, whether from John or just to add for our overall discussion. So the first question would be, that we all know that COVID-19 affected so many businesses in a different way. And John, how do you think it affected decentralized and centralized companies from the business efficiency perspective?
Yeah, so no, you're right, Elena. I mean, this obviously has enormous impact, again, economically, socially, and other dimensions as well. So the way I see it is digitization, which is sort of a precursor, if you will, or the underpinning of decentralization. Companies have been talking about digitization for a number of years now, maybe 10, 15, even 20 years. The way I see it is what has happened with this particular virus situation is digitization has exponentially accelerated. So those companies which were ahead are now exponentially even more ahead. And those companies and entities that were behind are unfortunately exponentially behind. So what was perhaps 2 years ago a somewhat uneven distribution in terms of digitization has now been significantly scaled out of proportion. So those companies who are ahead are now defining the landscape for tomorrow, which makes it very, very challenging, probably difficult, if not impossible, for the laggards to now try to catch up. So that's been for me the biggest observation as I talk to our customers, our partners, and certainly both public sector and private sector companies around the globe.
Thank you, John. We have one more question from one of our stream channels. There is a question from one of the people. When is it? You mentioned there is a future, right? That there is this decentralized organizational structures that will be happening in future, and when this future will actually happen, in your opinion? How would it change lives of ordinary people, those who directly involved in fintech and blockchain?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, and something I have a lot of passion and energy for. It's very simple. For me, it's very simple. It's about transaction cost. It's about the friction that today's systems, social, economic, and socioeconomic, are imposing on the common man. Those taxes we pay, the transaction cost, the friction that is inherent, intrinsic in the system. That is my goal, is how do we take those out? And I believe we do this by shifting to decentralized and ideally blockchain-based systems and architectures, because in doing so, we make it significantly easier for everybody to participate, and secondly, to benefit from their contributions and their work. And I want to take this rent-seeking middle tier entities out, which impose, like I said, friction and just extraneous layers of taxes and complexity. That is how we will see, we will know, and we will realize that we have crossed this bridge, if you will, to tomorrow's systems and architectures.
Perfect. Thank you a lot for replying to this question. And one more question regarding the previous one about COVID. Do you think that more centralized companies can switch into decentralized models after affecting from this COVID situation?
No, again, that's a terrific question. So I see this as inevitable, Elena. Yeah, I think there is no choice. But let me give you an example, right? Today, obviously, earlier as we were preparing, we were talking about the travel restrictions and the border closings and so on, right? So even if you are a global corporation, even if you are a very successful global entity today, whether you like it or not, you have been forced to operate differently, which is you have been forced to operate with much more autonomous entities in the various countries, geographies, and time zones. The kind of control, perhaps, or even the illusion of control that the big corporations had even 6 months ago is falling off very rapidly, right? So it is not a question of if, but it is more a question of how and when, because clearly the baggage they carry, and especially, as I said, if they have been a laggard in terms of digitization, that poses significant headwinds with respect to the shift in terms of new working models. People say, oh, we'll just shift to work from home, right? It's not as simple as that, because this creates certainly new value systems, new models in terms of engagement, and possibly even new ways to think about work culture. So for me, just to take a centralized system and then say magically, boom, we are here, is doomed to failure. So the question is really, to me, how will some of the old dinosaurs, if you will, make this transition? How will they navigate? Because unfortunately for them, the nimble upstarts who are certainly have a head start are going to be exponentially faster, right? Now, with that said, I don't want to say, it's never, but the change is probably the biggest change in terms of technology, but socioeconomic as well, for many of the world's biggest entities, public sector and private sector.
Okay, thank you, John. And it would be also great to hear a little bit more insights for this question from Ernesto and Elian. Also, do you guys think, like, if there are more centralized companies will be actually switching into decentralized models? Maybe you know some use cases that happened after COVID. Yeah, Ernesto?
Yeah, good. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here in this webinar and with such respected and admired panelists. So it's really good. I have to say that I agree with what John is saying, and I want, I'll share my screen really quickly for a second. And I found this on my Facebook page. I don't know if you can see it already, but this has become the truth for so many companies that I heard, who led the digital transformation of the company. It was COVID. So what we are seeing is that a lot of the companies were forced to do something that they knew they had to do a long time ago. And to complement this, I want to say that there are many concepts in the crypto world and in the blockchain sphere that many of the crypto believers think of black and white, but in reality, they are a spectrum. Decentralization is one of them, and digitization is another of them. So, right now, in most of the developed world, there is not one company that doesn't have something that is digitized. For example, even some of the most legacy and old-fashioned banks have a website. So that is digital. Is it a digital company? Not necessarily. And, on the other end of the spectrum, you have, let's say, a crypto exchange or organizations such as Decred or Neo or Dash that are fully digital. But still, there's people working in it. So we're not 100% digital. So, there is a spectrum, and in between, more to the non-digital part, there's all the traditional companies. I'll give you an example of my friend that works in a pharmaceutical company in Mexico. So they were all about, let's have everybody join a meeting around a wood desk and, them wearing the ties and everything. And now with COVID, they had to have the meetings, and my friend told me my boss doesn't know how to enter Zoom. So, that company was pushed to go digital. So that is one such example, and there are many around the world that, can attest to this. So now, I'm right now in Venezuela, even though I live in Mexico, but I came here for work. And many of the retails that were already hit very hard by all the economy problems, now they were forced to sell online. Because, if you want to stay in business, you must go and sell online. So what did most of them do? They opened up Instagram accounts and they put a post that said, now we can deliver. And when you write to them, there's somebody on the other end writing back and taking your order and then passing it to somebody. And then, that is some kind of digital. But just like John is saying, the winners of this are the ones that will, of course, react to the urgency, but then implement some of the tools that already exist. You don't need to develop your own robot. You don't need to, research artificial intelligence. There are companies that do it at a good price, and you just need to implement this in some part of your process. And just like, you guys were saying, the crypto industry, the blockchain industry has already understood this for at least 7 years, more strongly in the last 5. So that is why crypto industry so far, and this is funny to say, has been stable in between all these unstable times. So, there's still a lot to see. Maybe tomorrow there will be a huge crash and this is all swiped out. I don't think it will, but definitely the digital industry and the crypto industry has been well prepared for this terrible situation.
Thank you, Ernest, for such a great answer. and covering this topic, especially showing this peak. I also saw it some time ago and like saw that it's like describes the situation so well about COVID and who actually kind of motivated companies to finally do some changes. And Elian, if you have anything else to add, would be great to hear your opinion for this question.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Elena, for the invitation, and Ernesto, John, for sharing this panel. It's great to be here. Absolutely, I think COVID accelerated exponentially how companies, how organizations switch to digital. And then I agree with there has been so many things interesting said in the past 20 minutes. I have so many ideas in my head. Particularly this one that both John and Ernesto mentioned about that decentralization is not a black and white, or it's rather a spectrum. And I do think that in this context of accelerated digitalization and accelerated intercommunication, because I mean, we've been for over 6 months look at home, and of course our usage of online has increased exponentially. So I think we are definitely seeing that there are new interests coming into the space, particularly into the cryptocurrency space, following how in the past months people are engaging with cryptocurrencies, which is where I'm particularly the front where I am. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting to see this kind of acceleration. It's unfortunate that this has to come with all this massive worldwide crisis, economically crisis, like health crisis. But I want to think that eventually many of this sort of digitalization, and I think it's a bit too much to say that COVID has accelerated a process of decentralization. I'm not sure about it, because what we've seen is a high degree of centralization from the state and from particularly like all the responses to this crisis. So I'm not sure about it, but definitely there's a high degree of digitalization. I want to see what is going to come in the next months, as you know, we see how things evolve. If we're back to some sort of normality, I really miss meetups and, you know, in real life events. Last one we were, it was La BitConf in Uruguay, and it's like, oh wow, it's something that I really miss, right? So we'll see how things go. I'm certain, and we saw it on the crash of the cryptocurrency market of the 12th of March. How, I mean, crash and now it's back on top. There's this resilience in the industry. There is this resistance towards the crisis. So I'm definitely seeing that particularly the cryptocurrency industry has gained traction from this crisis.
Thank you, Elian. And I think for this section, it's all for Q&A, and we will have also some Q&A at the end for all of us to cover the final remarks and case studies from the companies. And now we can move with our next speaker, Elian, who was just adding more insights to the last question. So Elian Huesca is a LATAM operations lead at Decred. And Elian today will be covering the topics about what is the governance, the case of Decred as a decentralized organization, and Decred's future vision of a decentralized structure. So Elian, it's a pleasure to have you today with us, and please give us a little bit more information about you, and you can start with the topic.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the introduction, Elena. I'm going to share my screen. Just one sec. And well, a little bit about me. I arrived in the space around 2016 and started like working professionally around 2018. I've been working in different projects, particularly around education, giving talks about what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, what is Decred. I'm working with Decred as a LATAM lead, so I run the things, kind of all the content and the things that we're doing in Spanish. And well, today I'm going to talk to you a little about what is Decred, what are we doing as a decentralized organization, and what is the future of our organization. I'm gonna okay. One sec. So, what is Decred? Decred is a decentralized currency that is built on the foundations of decentralization, censorship resistance, peer-to-peer networks, permissionless networks, programmable money, if you want to call it in another way. And what we're doing is to build our currency, our decentralized currency, around a decentralized organization that develops this currency. We are. I'm going to go a bit further with the presentation. Okay, so we're gonna see basically 4 topics: an introduction of what is Decred, how does our governance system work, how does the organization work, and where are we going with this infrastructure, with this decentralized infrastructure that we're putting in place. So an introduction on Decred. Decred is a decentralized digital currency. It's built, as I mentioned, on being an open, progressive, self-funding cryptocurrency with a community-based governance system for the project to have a way to take decisions, but for the community to have a way to take decisions over the project. Our Decred is built on a hybrid blockchain, and I'm going to go a bit further on. And it has these particular characteristics, which are that it's self-funding. We have our own way to fund all our operations without the need of raising an initial coin offering or asking for venture capital for the development of the project. Everything is built by the community in a way that further incentivize decentralization and align the incentives between all the parties, all the stakeholders that comprehend that make the community of Decred. The idea of creating this governance layer or structure is to have a balance between the interests of all the participants of the network, and stakeholders are rewarded for participating in the governance of Decred. It was launched in 2016. I'm going to go a bit further in the historical context of the currency. It was launched in January 2016 by a group of ex-Bitcoin developers that in 2015 got in touch, a bit further, like 2014, got in contact with 2 anonymous developers. This is Taco Time and InkSoc. This anonymous developer contacted Conformal Systems, which now is Company Zero, and they started developing this currency back in 2015. The launch was in 2016, and since then, new features have been added into the network for the project to continue further decentralizing the power and the structure of the project and the currency. Since the end of 2018, we launched Politeia, which is our governance proposal system. I'm going to show you in a bit, and that has allowed us to sort of create a roadmap from the interactions of this platform, which is like a sort of a Reddit place in which all the communications are tied to the blockchain of Decred, which allows for this governance place to take place and decisions to be made. So the governance system works on the second layer that we have, on our hybrid blockchain. So the first layer of our blockchain is a proof of work layer, and then we have a proof of stake layer, which gives a sort of a second factor authentication for the network, in which there are not only miners securing the network, but also stakeholders that through this layer of proof of stake participate in the governance structure and help securing the network. The rewards of the blocks of our hybrid blockchain go as follows: 60% go to the miners that are using proof of work infrastructure, literally computers connected to the internet, verifying transactions. 60% of the reward goes to them. 30% goes to the users that are participating through the proof of stake layer, that are locking Decred on a smart contract for a random period of time and are being rewarded with this 30%. And then 10% goes into the treasury, the project treasury, that allowed us to pay and develop everything that the project is going to need. And I'm going to show you a bit further on. So let's visualize it. On the one hand, we have the miners that are putting hardware infrastructure to mine the blocks and secure the network through hash power. And then we have the stakers that are giving a sort of a second inspection on what the miners are doing, allowing and giving also a base layer sort of for this governance structure that we have put in place. Decentralization cannot exist without a diversity of interests, and this is something that we realize among the stakeholders that participate in the network, where we will find miners on the one hand, developers, stakeholders. Some of these stakeholders might be an individual like you and I, but it could also be an economic actor like an exchange. So we have a variety of actors, and the idea of this system is to align the incentives of all the participants in a way that the network can grow and mature over time, having a common sense of what is important and what is the sort of the north of the project, what is the next step forward for the project. So the tickets, as I mentioned, are coins that are locked into a smart contract for a random period of time, and that give protection to the network. They help secure the network. They give voting rights to the participants that are staking these coins. They receive a reward for the skinning the game that has been put into the network by locking these coins over time. And this is through a ticket. These tickets are what allows for the network to have this governance system. There are going to be around 40,960 tickets at any given time, and these are the votes that are counting every time that there is a new proposal on the system to govern. And I want to sorry about it, because I didn't question the first question that was on my slide, that it was, what is governance? So this is a fantastic question. It's so much important. What is governance in the context of a cryptocurrency or a blockchain project? It's basically how we take decisions. Governance is how we decide over an issue, over a matter. And we see instances of governance in other areas of life, like for example in government, where you have these governance structures to decide how a country, how a society is going to rule themselves. We have these in companies for companies to decide how are they going to govern themselves. We find this in NGOs, basically in every group of people. There's going to be some sort of governance. Historically, this has been family bloodlines. This has been force through fight, maybe. There's different ways to decide this. In the context of a decentralized cryptocurrency, the idea is to have a system in place for the stakeholders to govern the network, to have a say on the network. Why stake? Basically is to have a say in the project, to participate in the governance of the project, and to have a reward for having skin in the game for this participation. The importance of appliance. Okay, so this is basically how do we launch the network. At the beginning, we did an airdrop back in January 2016. We did an airdrop in which we distributed coins to around 2,900 people around the world, and this allowed the project to sort of bootstrap this layer of participants that would contribute and participate in the network. As of today, many of the people working on the project and that follow the project are still part of that first airdrop that happened in 2016. So the organization, where are we going? Basically, we have created this proposal system that I'm going to show you how it looks, which is a place in which we submit proposals, review them, and approve them for payment of these proposals. This is basically how it looks. Politeia, this is our proposal system, in which you will find proposals that are in discussions. At the moment, there are 2 proposals, one to create a poker series with prizes in Decred, and the other one for augmented reality posters. You have approved proposals, in which this is where you find the proposals that have been already approved by the community. For example, you find that recently there has been a proposal approved for the design of the project, basically, and this proposal passed with 79% of approval. In order for a proposal to be passed, it has to have at least 20% of the ticket that I mentioned before. This almost 41,000 tickets, and this is Politeia is basically where we discuss all these matters regarding the proposals for the project. This is how a decentralized governance platform looks like. We've been using it since late 2018. More than 40 proposals have been already passed. And this is how we're building the project. We're building it through a system that allows for the stakeholders to have a say in the project without the need of a hard fork that would split the community and decrease the value of the currency. I think so. Who is working in Decred? Basically, we are a network of contractors working for Politeia, working for this decentralized network of stakeholders that are voting on our proposals. My work in particular in Latin America has been through a proposal in which I asked for funds to the treasury of the project in order to continue working on Latin America. There are around 65 contractors all around the world working for the treasury of the project. And so what we think that governance matter, because at the end of the day, as these networks continue growing and growing and holding more and more value on them, the users of these networks are going to ask themselves, how can I have a say on the future of this currency where I'm putting my wealth? As of today, this is one of the single most important topics of discussions on the space. How are we governing these networks? How the users that are opting into these decentralized networks can have a say on the future of these projects, or in which they're putting skin in the game. Basically, we're putting money and we're risking assets into these networks. So where are we going now? What's the future of the project? Oh, well, what's the future of the project? We're continue making proposals and accepting proposals on Politeia, and this is basically the roadmap of the project. As of today, the best way to understand where is the project headed is to look into Politeia, our governance platform. And where are we headed now? We are there are very interesting updates on the pipeline, but as an organization, I think there's going to be a a further decentralization of the power in the network. There's a new update coming very soon, which is going to be the full decentralization of the network into the stakeholders' hands. This is going to be a big step into the governance future of the project, and it's definitely very interesting to see how over time, over the past years that I've been following around Decred and working with the project, how this is a way that has allowed for more contributors, anywhere in the world, to participate in the network, to propose ideas, to give thoughts about how they want to see the network grow, and in this way mature over time. That's pretty much it. What I have for you, I think that was interesting. It's a bit of the kind of a highlight of how the governance structure works at Decred. How do we govern our currency? And well, I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much, Elena. Going back to you.
Thank you, Elian, for your topic. Just a moment. Oh yeah, okay. Everyone is here. Yeah, thank you, Elian, for the presentation and sharing with us more insights on how Decred is organized. And I can see that it's truly decentralized. And for this reason, I have one question right away. How do you think this decentralized model can actually affect the decision-making speed in the company? Maybe you have also some insights from a Decred perspective.
To be honest, I think it tends to make it more complex. One of the perks of centralization is the ability to take decisions right away without the need to asking for consensus, without the need to asking for permission. Just like, you know, a CMO is going to act very quickly in what he thinks is the right way to go. When you don't have a CMO or a department of marketing, of communications, it tends to add a certain degree of complexity into the discussion, because then you will find this diversity of different positions and ideas towards what could be marketing. For some people at Decred, they think we shouldn't spend a dime on marketing because we should spend all the money on the development of the software. For some other people like me, I'm like, well, guys, I mean, this is incredible tech. It's magnificent technology, but we need to show it to the people, right? So governance in a project like Decred, it's all about getting into a point in which we can agree on something. It tends to make it, I think, it tends to make it more complex because you have a diversity of opinions, but it's definitely the way to go if you want to build a decentralized project in which there is a way to find consensus, which is very complicated. I mean, we have seen it over time with the chain split that has happened on particularly Bitcoin. This is what happened when you don't have a way to take decisions, right? So I think it's definitely interesting to see how it evolves over time when you have more stakers, when you have more participants, more actors, that at the end of the day they all have sort of a common place, a common idea, which is the growth and development of the network. But it definitely opens up this diversity of opinions and ideas towards what it could be something that from a centralized point of view is just very manageable and just very actionable.
And I think for Dash and now can be also the case, Chris, you have quite a global team in both Dash and Neo. And do you experience any challenges in decision-making process? Is it hard to get a reply, especially if you're trying maybe to solve some like urgent issues in the company? So we can start with Ernesto.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say, to add a comment to make this very clear. When you're talking about a decentralized protocol such as Dash, and Decred is also in the same way, it is not a company. It is a cluster of entities that work together for something they believe. It's more like I don't know the word in English, like a bunch of tuna fish that are together and they're all swimming to get to one place, and there's a small tuna, there's a large tuna, there are some tunas that look the same, and they all have something in common. In the case of tuna is that they're tuna, and in the case of Decred, they are Decred lovers and believers, and in the case of Dash, they are Dash fanatics, companies that work with Dash, or community members that are not fanatics, but so it's a mix of things. And I'm sorry to speak so much about Decred, Elian. It's just that we have so many things in common. So there is this movement, is the best way of describing it, and we all want to grow Dash. So, some believe that we suck at marketing, and others believe that we excel at marketing. Some believe that our products are completed and others don't. So that's when governance comes in. So in the case of Dash, we have a different tool, and we have very different mechanisms from Decred. We have something that we call master nodes, and master nodes are entities that hold at least 1,000 Dash, and they have the ability to vote. So let's say that here, I have one master node, Elian has one master node, John has one master node, and Elena has 10 master nodes. So we get into all this discussion, and I'm voting for why we need to do more things in Venezuela. Elian goes for Mexico. John says that it's got to be the US, but there's one vote on each, and you have 10. So that is a very different decision-making mechanism that other projects do. So what I think is that every governance model has their good things and their not so good things. Because at the end of the day, because you have 10 master nodes, you will do what you truly believe is better for Dash, because you're staking a bigger quantity. So you have more to win and also more to lose. So within all of this, there are, there's this cluster, and I prepared, I looked for another thing. So please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, it's ready.
So, okay, there is this thing in the middle that is called the DAO. And there's these other entities that are around the DAO that can be, a small unit, and this can be a research. And for example, Dash has funded the faculty of Arizona University to do some work that will benefit the DAO. And then there's small companies and large companies. Dash Core Group is one company that serves the DAO of Dash. And within Dash Core Group, we have a marketing person. We have the head of business development that I am right now. There is a CEO, and we all coordinate more or less like a company. But then when we come to the DAO, it's a whole different thing. Like I mentioned, every company has to, or individual, because it can be, Elena just submitting a proposal by herself because she wants to run 10 webinars or 10 whatever. So all of these companies have to benefit the DAO, which is Dash in general, and they all have different ways of organizing themselves. So within Dash Core Group, we are an organization. We have people that are working out of Russia. My ex-boss was in Australia. I am based in Mexico. So yeah, it's very, very decentralized. And, we have to use many tools. Of course, all of our meetings are online, but then that is, kind of more organized. And there's other companies that are, we've had about 20 companies at different times operating in Venezuela, and they have a leader and they have, contractors. There's other entities that are similar to what Elian does in Decred, and they do, either events or webinars. And what's really complex is how do we all go to a place together and make decisions? And that is how the Dash governance works. There's master nodes, and then there's all these companies, and everybody comes to the table. And we, in the case of Dash, we go to a place that is called Dash Central, and people make proposals. And those proposals that get enough votes, they pass. And the proposals that do not get enough votes do not pass. And then at the end of the month, the Treasury allocates a little bit of Dash for every one of these proposals. And there's, a number of, in this case, there were 4,200 Dash that were going to be allocated to all of this. And this project, Dash Platform, was asking for 232 Dash. Somebody else was asking for 26. So that is the way in Dash that we are solving for governance and the way for making decisions. For me, this is very strong, and that is the reason why you have not seen a fork of Dash like you see it in Bitcoin. Because, for example, Bitcoin is great for not changing, but whenever somebody wants to change, you are told to fork off. So people then fork, and then they go and make whatever change they want in another place. And those are not, in my opinion, easy to define as a better way of governance or as a worse way of governance. They are different ways of governing the decision and the future of a protocol. And, in time we will see, which one succeeds for reasons other than just market cap, because just talking about price is a whole different topic, and it's has their crazy thoughts in the middle. But this is the way that we're approaching governance. And, I would like to talk more about how to implement this outside of crypto, because I believe these are great experiments for online organizations, and societies can take a lot of value from them. But I'll leave those for the next part of the conversation.
Thank you, Ernesto. I think the graphics demonstrated quite well how Dash is working, and all their companies inside the structure. So I think it should be quite clear even for people who just exploring blockchain and crypto fields. So thank you a lot. And John, it would be also great to learn a little bit more about NEO and how their decision making is going on there.
Yeah, certainly, Elena. Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, I think both Elian and Ernesto make very timely and I think very relevant comments about the complexities of governance, especially in a world of decentralization. I would like to say two things, and then, as you said, talk a bit about NEO as well. So two things. Firstly, I think a key challenge for us today is that if we try to apply the models and tools that we have used to understand, to analyze, and to model the centralized ways of thinking, of management, and so on to this new approach, it will fail, right? And that's why I think we have these challenges, because we are trying to translate and look for simplistic transformations. So that's where I believe, as an industry, perhaps we should be cautious. Maybe we should step back and say, if we apply the same models and tools, perhaps we might get the same results, which we might not like, which we might not want to see. The second thing, obviously, for us in terms of our own lessons learned, is with respect to governance, incentives matter. I think all of us would agree, right? Incentives and disincentives drive and motivate us as human beings, as employees, as entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth, right? So thinking, very clearly and precisely, and being able to model the implications and what you might say the unintended consequences of incentives, I believe, is particularly, important for us as we make this shift. Now, I want to give, again, one historical precedent, right? If we look back at the Industrial Revolution, it took us decades, multiple decades, to understand and to harness not just the technologies, but also the organizational models to be able to effectively and efficiently, to exploit these new waves of technologies. So for us, I think, in my humble opinion, for us to say, we've managed to solve this in 12 months or even 2 years or 3 years, I think is premature. For us at NEO, the way we think about it's a long-term journey. We realize that governance is what will make decentralized systems successful or not. We also realize that there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution, let alone a simple solution. So we're exploring multiple avenues, multiple approaches, with a very firm conviction and a very clear commitment to the future. But along the way, our goal is to learn, to observe, to watch, to get the feedback, and of course, to adjust and make the course correction. Because otherwise, if I told you that, somebody has solved the governance problem today, I think they're either being very simplistic or perhaps, they're hiding something they don't want us to know. So I would just say, let's be careful. I think we're all here for the same goal, which is to build a tomorrow which is better for all of us, right? And our loved ones and friends and families. But I think there's one thing we can learn from the Industrial Revolution is this thing takes time. Change is hard, right? And but we remain firmly committed, and of course have the conviction that working through multiple models of incentives, that we will find a way out in terms of managing the complexity. But I don't think we should be too eager to say, will it happen tomorrow or 6 months or even a year? This will take us time. There are significant implications socially, economically. The socioeconomic intersections, I think, particularly important for us to navigate carefully, that we don't somehow build a world that might have some consequences that we might not particularly appreciate down the line. That's kind of how I would respond to you, Elena.
Thank you, John, for giving your feedback for this question. And I think we can start moving to Ernesto as our next speaker. So Ernesto is the head of business development at Dash. And Ernesto already briefly covered governance with Dash organization today. And Ernesto also continues sharing Dash perspectives on the centralized future. So let me just change the setup for speakers. And Ernesto, please give us a little bit brief about yourself, and you can continue with your talk.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. Well, so thank you so much for having me here. My name is Ernesto Contreras. I'm the head of business development for Dash Core Group. I am Venezuelan, although I live in Mexico for the past 7 years. In this moment, I'm in Venezuela again because I came for work and stayed because of COVID. So long story short, I have about 17 years of work experience in consumer products and technology. And I have been working full-time in crypto for about 4 years, 3 of them with Dash and a little less than a year with the largest exchange in Latin America. So talking about Dash, Dash is short for digital cash. We are a decentralized cryptocurrency that aims to be peer-to-peer digital cash. We are, working hard to provide the options for people to use their money as they see fit. And through the DAO and through the technology of Dash, we have managed to grow in different ways. So quickly, I will again refer to some of the slides that I've shown. And just like we were talking previously, the traditional way of organization is, in one company, you have a top-down approach and these people decide, and then there's people implementing, and that is good. But then there was this electronic world where decentralization can have use cases. And what are some of these use cases? Why would somebody want to be decentralized and not centralized? Well, one of them is censorship resistance. We saw how a few years ago, many countries were making decisions on the financial futures of people. And when you have decentralized systems, then people are not obliged to have only that type of money. That has become very evident in places like Venezuela, also Argentina, Zimbabwe, and all around the world, especially during COVID, more or less people are disagreeing with the approach that governments are taking with their own money. So when you have a decentralized approach of organizing finances, you can not be a slave to the finances of your own country. So that is one use case. The other use case is when you have a lot of activity that's happening on the internet and you need to make decisions. So the internet is the perfect place for decentralized organizations. Why? Because just like you would on internet, you don't need to rely on one point of decision and in one point of trust. So this allows everybody to go and use a currency that is not needed to have the trust on one person. So these are two of the possibilities or the use cases where a decentralized organization would be needed. And then, there comes the DAO, which, as far as I know, Dash was the first and is the biggest DAO so far. And the DAO allows for these decentralized entities to interact with each other. And, this is not a graph of mine. This is something I pulled out of internet. But this is a two-way street. You go to the DAO, you do some work, the DAO gives you something back. In the case of Dash, it can be funds, so you can have resources for taking your project to the next level. It is also understanding of it. With time, the Dash DAO has learned lessons, some the hard way, and some have been easier lessons. But this is a two-way street that makes many of these different entities cooperate with one another. So then, how does Dash work? Like I mentioned, there are different entities that come to the dashcentral.org place or Dash Nexus website, and they can come here and post proposals. I will just quickly go over two of them. This is one of the big learnings of Dash. It's called Dash Watch. It is an entity that said, all these companies, they say that they're doing X and Y work for Dash. So there needs to be somebody to go and ask them questions and see if they're accomplishing what they said. So for example, Dash Watch is one of the learnings of Dash, and they come to the DAO, they hire a group of people, and these people make audits to these different teams. So they interview other proposal owners, and then they post the results. So as a result of that, Dash can have somebody look over the interest of Dash. And well, because of my internet, I cannot see Dash Nexus, but this is a different project that allows the voters to see how they are ranked in terms of votes. So there's different tools, and these tools allow different people to come into Dash. What are some of the results and some of the good things? For example, we've grown a lot in places where Dash is needed, like Venezuela. There are teams also working in Nigeria. There are obviously teams in the US, such as Dash Core Group and others. There are teams in Thailand. So what this DAO concept allows is that the decisions and the thinking and the opportunity searching does not need to happen only on one entity's leadership. So this allows for, a group in Venezuela, and they saw that cryptocurrencies were needed, and they say, well, if we make some meetups, we might get people to come and learn about this Dash thing. And that is how the movement in Venezuela started about 2 years ago with a team called Dash Venezuela, and that has been one of our biggest successes. We've had thousands of merchants start to accept Dash. We have about half a dozen of exchanges that started working with Dash. We've had teams develop their own technology here, such as Dash Text, where you can send and receive Dash from a feature phone. And some of these projects have been successful and others have died. So this allows for a constant learning, constant applying things and pivoting from one project to the other, and that will allow a decentralized organization to thrive. So what I think is the future for this is cryptocurrencies will continue to grow, and in a not so distant future, many places around the world will have the option to pay in the local currency or in a decentralized currency, such as Dash. We have, thousands of currencies now. I don't think all of them will survive. We'll have a handful of them. Some people say 1% of the 5,000 currencies. I don't know the exact numbers, but those that find a real use case and that deliver the promise of solving an issue will be those that thrive. We're working hard to make sure Dash is one of them, but only time will tell. But what is for sure is that this technology will open up doors for more people to solve the problem, whether that's in broken economies such as Argentina, Venezuela, Nigeria, and others. And it will also find more use cases in places where the economy is not so bad, such as gaming, such as cryptocurrency trading. And there's many more things that we have yet to discover, such as the DeFi projects that are booming right now. But in short, this is the future of money. And I'm very happy that, we have so many talented and eager people to make it work, such as my friends here that are in the panel. And this is definitely the future, and we all need to jump and be part of it.
Thank you, Ernesto, for covering this topic and sharing more information about Dash and how Dash working. It seems you cover pretty much the whole world. Do you have any information on how many countries you actually cover with the Dash team or the site Dash organizations?
Yeah, in total, there have been around 100 different Dash-funded organizations. We have covered all of the world in terms of continents, but we've had more success and more focus in the places where there is a mix of two things. Number one, good professional teams that are working hard to get results. And it's not only about working hard, it's also about working smart, and I'll get to that. And the second place is teams that are working in an industry or geography where you can solve the problem. I'll give you two very different examples. There are teams that are working with Dash in Germany, Switzerland, and Belgium. And there are teams that are working with Dash at the same time in Venezuela. The guys in Venezuela found that because of the broken economy, people are willing to save money in Dash, Bitcoin, and other cryptos, and they're willing to pay with this crypto in some places. So the guys in Venezuela found out that you can find a lot of merchants and get the merchants to accept being paid in Dash. That's why in Venezuela you can go to Burger King, go to Church's Chicken, go to a large retail store that is called Traki, that is somewhat similar to Walmart, and you can pay there. But the guys in Germany found that there is not such need because of instability in Germany. So they focused more on trading, on larger integrations, and more digital-focused use cases. So it's a mix of these two things. That's why we have more concentration on certain places where there's either a very good group working or a group that is also very good but found a specific use case. And that is very important. And we always say it in Dash, and it's part of a problem of many projects, and I will not say their names, but many projects are too focused on only building. If you only build something, it's not going to take off, because you need to build something, number one, that is useful, number two, that is needed, and number three, you need to go and show it to people. Like Elian was saying, it's not just about the technology. It's also about educating people and not keeping it a secret. So it's a mix of things, and that is, for me, the secret sauce in Dash, at least, that the DAO allows for a decentralized way of experimenting and finding where the technology that is right here today ready can be used. The technology of the future of what's going to be needed in 2030, 2050 is very important, and many people are building it. But there needs to be, a mix of, we cannot be researching and developing all the time. You also need to put it to use. And that is, in my case, what I have seen in Dash. So long story short, where Dash is all around the world, just like any decentralized cryptocurrency. But we have teams, we have boots on the ground in many places, And right now, I counted it before this meeting. There's about, I think, about a dozen teams in different geographies. Of course, it's not enough, but we do focus a lot in the places where we believe there can be a real use case.
Ernesto, thank you for introduction and covering this question. I also wanted to ask if you have maybe a few tips for other companies and organizations that are willing to look into decentralized structures, how they can actually manage their teams, and also maybe the companies that don't have such governance structures as, for example, Dash or Decred or Neo, but just for companies with global teams, because Dash covering pretty much the whole world. And I'm pretty sure you might have some great tips for companies, how they can collaborate, how they can do their management of their organizations and share maybe some insights between these global teams.
Yeah. Well, number one, the most important part, and actually I think it's the hardest one, is leadership needs to understand that it is possible. And this is something that, you know, COVID reminds me. I don't know if you have seen, there's many videos on the internet when people are going to jump on a parachute or on a bungee jump, and they're like 1, 2, and then they push them. So COVID is actually the guy that pushes the organizations. So number one, you can have a decentralized team. Number two, and this is something that I tell my friends that have regular companies, you do not need to build the tools. Like, why build, you know, a chat? Why build Skype? Why build all of your website? You know, there are tools that are pre-built, and you can take the pieces, so that way you can go to market faster. I met a guy that is the CFO of a large chain of retail, and they were building from scratch all of their e-commerce solution, including an app. So they're getting ready to roll out in 2021. And I was telling them, man, hey, there's a large amount of people that want to buy from you right now. You don't need to build everything. I mean, you can build it, but it doesn't need to wait until then. What can you outsource? Who can you cooperate? So that's tip number two. Number one, there needs to be a will. Number two, you do not need to build everything, so outsource and partner. And number three, be willing to make mistakes. You know, that this is, everybody will miss their online meeting at one time. And, you know, when people start getting used to the tools, you know, you just, for example, Google has amazing tools. This calendar reminds you 10 minutes before the call. There's, I love, for example, I use it very much. It's called World Time Buddy, that allows to see the different time zones. And, you know, if Elena is in Argentina, John is in Germany, Elian is in Russia, I can at the same time see the time zones and see that, you know, my 9 a.m. might be 3 a.m. for John or whatever. So just like I said, there's different tools, and these are small tips that are.
What is that? What is it? That tool again, Ernesto?
Oh, there you can see somebody that needs it. World Time Buddy.
Cool.
So it just shows you, you know, yeah, the time zone for different places, and that's, instead of asking, oh, what time is it for you now? What time? I just say, hey, where are you right now? And then that way I can start. So like I said, it's all about being willing to do it, and then search for all the tools. Because, I mean, I saw John agreeing with that, because, like, you don't need to build the calendar stuff for yourself. So, you know, many of the tools are already there, and it's mostly about, well, let's try it out. This friend that works in the retail, they're still in the middle of COVID meeting, and, you know, having they just have a larger boardroom, so they can, you know, sit farther away, because the CEO is still not on board with being 100% digital. It might not work for everybody, but I'm sure there's many things that you can optimize when you go to a more digital. And remember what I said, it's a spectrum. You don't need to go from full retail into 100%, digital, and let's get rid of the people and start hiring bots. That doesn't need to be the case. There are some steps that you can take that will optimize and, of course, go well with the business model.
Thanks, Ernesto. I think it's pretty helpful. And the calendar app, I already can see that.
Right? Cool.
Yeah, I'm going to share it with me because for now they're using me as a time zones
manager. Yeah.
Time zone master, I would say, because I learned all of them because of all these calls around the world, and I was also traveling from country to country.
Yeah.
I kind of remember all of them.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, Elena. I just remember that when you did that huge event a few months ago, I know that if I had shared this, I would have saved a lot of time for you. I didn't think of it.
No, I already knew all the time zones by that time. No, case it's pretty fun. So
Yeah.
I think we're coming to the end, and we have time for last remarks from each of us. And I think it would be great to learn a little bit more about the current situation. Because again, COVID thing is being discussed already, maybe too much, but still people are wondering how companies are getting affected, especially now when many countries are being opened and the situation is becoming better. In some places, it only starts, like in Venezuela, as you mentioned, Ernesto, before. So I think it would be great to know if there was any effect on your organizations. Did you feel like any difference in terms of their like management decisions or just communications between the teams? Maybe also because it's not like it's not possible to have personal meetings and everything switched into digital. And was there any effect on your organizations? And we can maybe start now with Elian, then John, and then also finish with Ernesto.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Elena. Well, I mean, our communications were not disrupted because we were already a digital organization. So for us, it was business as usual. In particular, some of the things that we do, like events, for example, that was completely shut down. All meetups and events were shut down. So we just switched to digital, which it comes with a couple of perks, which is you can do more exponentially. You can reach a larger audience. You miss the personal feeling, the one-to-ones. That's, of course, what's something that you miss. But I think the cryptocurrency industry and Decred in particular just shift very well in a completely digital sort of interaction. So yeah, I think it was a bit business as usual, just changes of strategies, and just keep building.
Thanks, Elian. John, now we can learn a little bit more about NEO and how the situation was affecting your organization.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I mean, I don't want to belittle clearly not just the economic damage and fallout, but the health impact, the mental health impact. I mean, clearly, this is a huge challenge on multiple dimensions. So. But again, not to belittle all of those. In practical terms, though, I would concur with Elian. I mean, we have been able to proceed to continue. In fact, and not to do any marketing for NEO, but just we are on track to launch NEO 3. We just launched the Poly network, our interop protocol. We just announced and launched Flamingo, which is our family of DeFi initiatives. And in fact, 2 months ago, in the middle of this, we actually were one of the co-founders of the Interwork Alliance, a global body for standards. So I think in terms of practically speaking, we have been able to continue. But like I said, clearly there are other dimensions in terms of not being able to meet, have a beer, talk, over lunch, over dinner, all those things. And I am unwilling to accept the so-called new normal. I want to go back to all of those interpersonal connections, because I think that's what makes us human. And I'm certainly not willing to give those up anytime soon.
Yeah, of course, I can feel it, and of course, from a practical perspective, yeah, it can affect a lot some businesses, and it's very great to hear that it didn't really affect much your organizations. And Ernesto, what about this?
Yeah, well, just to complement what Elian and John were saying, personally, I miss hugging people. You know, see somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, and now you go like, "Hey, boom!" But you know, you miss, "Hey, John, great to see you for the first time. Again, I haven't seen you." So that's part. Again, I'd like to reiterate what John said. It's despite the digital world not being hit, this is a terrible time for human beings. Many people lost their jobs, lost their lives. So it is something that we cannot forget. You know, work-wise, it's been really interesting how reality has shown to us. Like I said, we have like our strategy is broken down for Dash in kind of two ways. Number one, the trading and digital world, and number two, the real world usage, like Venezuela, places where you can actually use some of it. So in all of the real world use, everything came to a halt between March and April, completely halted. And then it started to kind of like, I would describe it as a broken bicycle to start moving forward, but you know, the pieces are not going well and you have to stop and fix it and then go forward. So some of the big initiatives we had were halted for a couple of months and now are starting to look for ways to move forward. On the digital front, it's been really interesting because businesses actually, integrations have increased. Last quarter, we had the largest amount of integrations that we ever had in 3 months in the history of Dash. Most of them were trading and crypto initiatives. But within that part, it's really interesting. Like John said, we're humans. So, you know, we have a meeting and we were saying, hey, let's integrate Dash, let's do this. And then, you know, you spend 10, 15, 30 minutes of the meeting talking about people, how they were worried, how, you know, they have somebody that's close to them that has infected with COVID and how they're been preoccupied and how they're adapting. So it's interesting that even in a fully digital space where things should not have stopped because in theory, everything keeps moving forward, the human aspect just comes very strongly and it is impacted. So I guess this is, you know, a time of remembering that, yes, there are tools, there are ways to continue moving forward, but, you know, it's all about taking care of people and finding the best ways to move forward. And let's hope that, you know, this is done and completely over very soon, so we can go back to that old normal that we all miss. But, you know, take the learnings from this time, because millions, probably billions of people were exposed to digital commerce. Millions of people were forced to buy online. Millions of people saw that now there's this thing called crypto something that allows you to send money to somebody at the other part of the world. So that can be positive for not only Dash and Neo and Decred, but for everybody that's using them. But, you know, within the context of why it was exposed, not ideal, but hopefully, you know, we can make the best of it and come out stronger.
Thank you, Ernesto. I completely agree. So, well, today we covered decentralized and centralized organizations, discussed pros and cons for each of the models. And I think the last remarks were showing a lot how the company is working. And as Ernesto and John and Elian covered, there is a human aspect here.
that is very different, and even decentralized models can be well structured and prepared for any shocks in the environment, in the economy, and decentralized companies in practical aspect can move very well, but we still have the human aspect that can affect the companies. And it's very hard to say still if decentralized or centralized model is preferred. I think it's up to the companies to decide which model fits them better. And as it was already mentioned before by our speakers, that it's no need to try to build something new and implement it at the very beginning. It can be a step-by-step approach, taking it with some smaller aspects, using some tools that are already built in order to improve for your business operations and find a better way to structure your company. So it's a big pleasure to have all of you today in the panel, and thank you for sharing your insights. Hope to see you in our next panels or webinars in future. And everyone have a great day.